movie is truly flawless, and that goes double for the horror genre. Even the best slashers and creature features are filled with cliches, stereotyped characters, and implausible plots. After all, we have to ignore inconsistencies and leaps in logic to enjoy almost any movie. I'm Jess from What Culture, and here are 10 horror movies so good you overlook major flaws. Number 10. Sartain's villainous reveal adds nothing. Halloween 2018. Halloween Kills was awful. Halloween Ends was arguably worse. Luckily, we can all agree the 2018 version of Halloween was far better than it should have been. In fact, many regard it to be the best installment in the franchise since the original. Annoyingly, the sequel could have been improved even more if it removed one specific detail. In the opening, we see Michael Myers being treated by Dr. Sartain, who was a student of Michael's psychiatrist, Dr. Loomis. While Michael is transferred to another facility shortly after, he escapes and begins making his way to Laurie Strode's home. Just before the big showdown, Sartain reveals to Laurie's granddaughter how he orchestrated Michael's escape. By studying Michael in the wild, Sartain believes he could gain a greater insight into how a serial killer thinks. However, Sartain's villainous monologue is cut short when Michael murders him and crushes his skull. So not only was Sartain's heel turn silly, it was unneeded. If this scene was removed, it would have had no effect on the plot. As a result, it makes you wonder why the filmmakers included this revelation in the first place. Number 9. Amateur practical effects, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Although Halloween is responsible for popularizing slashers, A Nightmare on Elm Street's role in cementing the genre cannot be overstated. Because of the brilliant premise, tight script, masterful editing, perfect direction, and a career-best performance by Robert Englund, you can see why Wes Craven's masterwork became a classic. Now, because horror films usually have a shoestring budget, special effects tend to look ropey. So if you notice a rubbery prosthetic or a paper mache head while watching a slasher, you gotta be understanding, since the filmmakers have very little money to work with. Unfortunately, A Nightmare on Elm Street has so many subpar effects, it's distracting. Despite the fact some visuals look top-notch, there's no question the bad far outweighs the good. When Nancy runs up the stairs, you can blatantly see the steps are pre-cut so she'll fall through them. When Freddy presses his face against the wall, you can see it's made out of spandex. Even though the Freddy tongue phone is meant to be creepy, it looks like a wind-up toy. Sadly, the movie ends with the fakest effect of the lot. When Freddy drags Nancy's mother through the window, it's obvious she's a blow-up doll. Number 8. The Xenomorph's inexplicable growth spurt. We all remember the revulsion and shock we felt while watching Alien, when the facehugger's spawn burst out of Kane's chest. Even if you knew the moment was coming, it still chilled you to the bone. Because of the visuals, the chestburster's design, and the actors' performances, you can understand why this scene helped define sci-fi horror. However, this legendary scene is followed by the film's only gripe. Immediately after this sequence, the tiny newborn scurries away. The next time we see the Xenomorph, it's grown to adult size. But the question is how? How did a teeny weeny critter grow 7 feet in 2 hours? I mean, I know it's an extraterrestrial, so it'll have a unique physiology, but its increase in mass is biologically impossible. Even though the Xenomorph would need to eat a staggering amount of food to grow this large, we don't see the Star Beast eat anything. For the sake of the plot, it does make sense why the Xenomorph grows in size, since it'd be ridiculous watching the crew fight an extraterrestrial the size of a chihuahua. And because the rest of the movie is virtually flawless, it's one plot hole that movie fans tend to accept. Number 7. The rules are flawed. Gremlins. Okay, we all know Gremlins rules don't make sense. The characters point out how illogical these rules are in Gremlins too. However, acknowledging a plot hole doesn't change the fact that something doesn't add up. When Mr. Wing's grandson sells Gizmo to Randall, he tells him mogwais cannot be exposed to water. If a mogwai comes into contact with a single drop, they'll multiply. However, we see these nasty creatures walking on snow numerous times without incident. Since snow is crystallized water, they should be multiplying non-stop. Annoyingly, this plot hole could have been avoided if we didn't see the titular monsters trudging through snow at any point. Unfortunately, there's another rule that doesn't make any sense. If a mogwai eats after midnight, they'll transform into a gremlin. However, nobody points out that it's always after midnight. 10 a.m. is after midnight. Technically, 11 p.m. is 23 hours after midnight. What's the earliest you can feed a mogwai without it transforming into a monster? Is 8 a.m. too early? Dawn? Noon? What's the cutoff? Considering how dangerous gremlins are, it's odd how Mr. Wing's grandson didn't mention this when he sold Gizmo to Randall. Number 6. Ash doesn't acknowledge the events in the first film, Evil Dead 2. Although great horror sequels are rare, there's no question Evil Dead 2 is among them. Despite the fact Sam Raimi's first film set the bar to an astronomical level, the follow-up surpassed it in every way. Evil Dead 2 is funnier, gorier, and more creative. Most importantly, this is the installment where Bruce Campbell's character Ash comes alive. But there's one aspect that doesn't add up. Because Evil Dead 2 opens with a recap, it's clear this is a direct sequel, even though the continuity between both films doesn't really match. Even though Ash arrived at the cabin with his friends in the first entry, Evil Dead 2 alters this event, stating Ash came with his girlfriend Linda. Also, Ash acts so differently this time around, he's basically a different character. So why is this? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. Because Sam Raimi didn't own the rights to the Evil Dead and made the sequel with a different company, he couldn't show clips from the previous entry. For the recap, he had to film completely different scenes, and as a result, he used this opportunity to tweak the story and characters. Considering Raimi suffered massive limitations while making Evil Dead 2, it's a miracle the sequel turned out so well. However, the continuity inconsistencies are blatantly obvious, especially if you watch the films back to back. Number 5. It's too damn long. Terrifier 2. Terrifier 2 isn't for everybody, but if you can't get enough of extreme gore, this sequel will be everything you ever wanted in a slasher. This time around, our antagonist, Art the Clown, cranks the violence up to 11, performing kills that are equally creative and gross. Just when you think the bloodshed has peaked, Art executes another depraved act that outshines all the others. Terrifier 2 also stands out since it's one of the very few horror follow-ups that's dramatically better than its predecessor. Even though it seemed like a needless sequel, fans were eager for Art to return. But there's one problem. Terrifier 2 just doesn't seem to end. Even though the average slasher can barely break the hour-and-a-half mark, this installment is a bum-numbing 138 minutes. Now, there's nothing wrong with a long horror film. After all, Aliens and It have the same runtime as Terrifier 2. However, those movies get away with it since every scene feels needed. Although every scene in Terrifier 2 is entertaining, you'll feel this film's length, since many of these sequences are kind of pointless. The film could easily have removed a good 30 minutes without impairing the plot in any way. Number 4. Atrocious CGI. The Mist. The ending of The Mist isn't just heartbreaking, it's heart-destroying. It's so tragic, it leaves you shaken to your core. The climax is so memorable, it overshadows every other aspect in the movie. As a result, fans of The Mist tend to forget how fake the monsters look. Although some creatures look phenomenal, especially the behemoth, the first one we're introduced to is laughable. As this tentacled beast attacks our ensemble, viewers should be left quaking in their boots. Instead, you can't help but be distracted by how untextured this cephalopod looks. Sadly, that's not the worst special effect, because the movie is called The Mist. You'd think one thing that would look realistic is, well, the mist. Ironically, this film might have the least convincing mist in the history of cinema. Do you know why? Instead of using a smoke machine, the film crew created the mist with CGI, and it looks terrible. Although the tentacle monster isn't convincing, you can forgive it since it's never easy to make a CGI creature look authentic. However, there's no reason why the crew couldn't make a bit of vapor look real, especially when that's the film's entire premise. Number 3. The last 5 minutes is cliched. Barbarian. Warning, big spoilers for Barbarian here, and nope out now and meet us at number 2 if you don't want to know what happens, because I am about to tell you. In Barbarian, two strangers, Keith and Tess, find themselves sharing an Airbnb for the night. When they discover a tunnel in the basement, they venture downward, where they're attacked by a savage inbred called the Mother. After Keith is killed, the Mother imprisons Tess, hoping to raise her as her baby. When the landlord visits the Airbnb and finds the tunnel, he and Tess try to escape. Almost immediately after Barbarian was released, it was regarded by many as the best horror film of 2022. Even though that label sounds hyperbolic, it's easy to see why. Barbarian uses a lot of misdirection and mystery, so viewers have no idea what's going to happen next. On 2 occasions, it cuts to a seemingly unrelated scene at the moment of maximum tension, keeping viewers permanently on edge. Even though Barbarian is astonishingly creative, it loses steam in the final moments. Although the Mother seems slightly supernatural, she comes across as a figure that could theoretically exist. But in the last scene, it's revealed she has super strength on par with a comic book villain. Even though she's heavily emaciated, the Mother can smash through walls like the Juggernaut, rip off arms with ease, and survive a 20-foot fall. Why the filmmakers decided to turn this tragic creature into Jason Voorhees in the last 5 minutes is bewildering. Number 2. The twist falls apart if you think about it. The Sixth Sense. In The Sixth Sense, Bruce Willis's character Dr. Malcolm Crowe is tasked with helping a boy called Cole who can see dead people. In the final scene, it's revealed Malcolm has been a ghost the whole time, without him or Cole realizing. Because of this shocking twist, The Sixth Sense is hailed as the ultimate must-see twice movie. When you revisit it, you're blown away by all the clues that Malcolm was dead the whole time. Unfortunately, this bombshell falls apart when you give it a bit of thought. Where does Malcolm go when he leaves Cole? Where's he staying? Does he realize he hasn't slept, eaten, or gone to the bathroom for months? Now, because Cole says ghosts don't know they're dead, it's possible Malcolm doesn't notice the passage of time in the same way as the living. Also, you have to ignore some inconsistencies to enjoy the movie. But there are some basic things that don't make sense. If no one hired Malcolm, how did he learn about Cole? In one scene, Cole enters his home and sees his mother sitting down with Malcolm. What was he doing before Cole arrived? Was he just sitting with Cole's mom in silence? Although The Sixth Sense is an astounding film, it's better if you don't think about it too much. Number 1. Why is Jigsaw in the room? Saw. In Saw, Dr. Gordon and Adam wake up in a dilapidated bathroom, having no memory of how they got there. To their horror, they find a dead body on the floor holding a cassette recorder. Upon playing it, they learn they are the latest victims of the serial killer Jigsaw. Throughout the whole film, viewers will be racking their brain trying to deduce the villain's identity. In the closing moments, the corpse rises to his feet, revealing Jigsaw was in the room the entire time. Even though Saw is nearly 20 years old, this climax has not lost its impact. Now, some naysayers will point out how Jigsaw couldn't have laid there for hours without noticeably breathing. However, Saw 3 resolves this plot hole by revealing Jigsaw took a muscle relaxant to give the impression he was dead. Alright, but there's another problem. There's no reason why Jigsaw is in the room in the first place. If he wasn't there, the story would have played out the exact same way. Why would Jigsaw risk being exposed if he didn't have to be in the bathroom? Although Jigsaw's decision made the big reveal more cinematic, it doesn't make sense in terms of the plot. That's the end of our list, but let me know down in that comment box if you can think of any other horror movies that are just so damn good you overlooked major flaws. As always, I've been Jess from What Culture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm @JessMcDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more great horror lists.